Breakfast at Tiffany's, released in 1961, is one of the most iconic romantic comedies in cinematic history, and much of its enduring charm can be attributed to the magnetic performances of its lead actors. The cast, especially Audrey Hepburn and George Peppard, helped define the tone and emotional depth of the film, transforming it from a simple adaptation of Truman Capote's novella into a timeless piece of cinema. This page explores the careers of the main actors before and after Breakfast at Tiffany's, what they brought to their roles, and how the film influenced their trajectories in Hollywood and beyond. Audrey Hepburn, who portrayed the enigmatic Holly Golightly, was already a celebrated actress by the time she took on the role. Born in Belgium in 1929, Hepburn rose to fame in the early 1950s with standout performances in Roman Holiday, 1953, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, and Sabrina, 1954. Known for her elegance, grace, and unique screen presence, she quickly became a fashion icon and symbol of classic Hollywood glamour. By the time Breakfast at Tiffany's was being cast, Hepburn was already a household name with films like Funny Face and The Nun's Story under her belt. However, playing Holly Golightly marked a significant departure from her earlier, more traditionally good girl roles. Holly was a complex and somewhat morally ambiguous character, an eccentric party girl with a mysterious past and a fragile inner life. Truman Capote, the author of the original novella, had envisioned Marilyn Monroe for the role and was reportedly disappointed when Hepburn was cast instead. Yet, despite early skepticism, Hepburn made the role entirely her own. She imbued Holly with vulnerability, charm, and an inner sadness that made the character both sympathetic and intriguing. Her performance balanced whimsy and depth, elevating Holly from a manic pixie stereotype into a nuanced portrayal of a woman searching for identity and security. The role had a significant impact on Hepburn's career. While she continued to act in films like Charade, 1963, My Fair Lady, 1964, and Wait Until Dark, 1967, Breakfast at Tiffany's became one of the defining roles of her career. It cemented her image as a style icon, thanks in part to the now legendary opening scene where Holly eats a croissant in front of Tiffany's wearing a black Givenchy dress, oversized sunglasses, and pearls. This look has become one of the most replicated and revered fashion moments in cinematic history. Beyond fashion, Holly Golightly allowed Hepburn to showcase her range as an actress, balancing comedic timing with emotional resonance. It was a role that would follow her throughout her life and forever tie her legacy to the film. George Peppard, who played Paul Varjak, was a relative newcomer compared to Hepburn but brought his own quiet charisma to the role. Born in 1928, Peppard had worked in theater and had a few film roles to his name, including The Strange One, 1957, and Home from the Hill, 1960. His casting as Paul, a writer who becomes intrigued and eventually enamored with Holly, was seen as somewhat unconventional. Peppard played Paul with a restrained elegance, grounding the film in emotional realism. His chemistry with Hepburn was subtle yet sincere, and he managed to portray Paul as both a romantic lead and a reflective observer of Holly's chaotic world. Peppard's career after Breakfast at Tiffany's included a mix of film and television roles. While he never reached the same level of stardom as Hepburn, he enjoyed a long and varied career. One of his most memorable roles came 2 decades later when he starred as Colonel John Hannibal Smith in the hit 1980s television show The A-Team. Though some critics argue that his performance in Breakfast at Tiffany's lacked emotional depth, others see his subdued portrayal as a deliberate contrast to Holly's flamboyance, emphasizing the emotional core of the story. Patricia Neal played the role of 2E Fawkinson, Paul's wealthy older benefactor. Her performance, though brief, added a layer of sophistication and complexity to the story. Neal was an accomplished actress with a strong background in both stage and screen. Before Breakfast at Tiffany's, she had already won acclaim for roles in The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, and A Face in the Crowd, 1957. Following Breakfast at Tiffany's, she would go on to win an Academy Award for Best Actress in 1963 for her role in HUD. Neil's portrayal of 2E brought an understated menace and elegance to the character, reminding audiences of the compromises and power dynamics often involved in romantic or transactional relationships. Martin Balsam appeared as O.J. Berman, Holly's fast-talking agent and friend. Balsam was a respected character actor known for his versatility and ability to bring realism to even the most eccentric roles. He had previously appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, 1960, as the ill-fated Detective Arbogast. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, Balsam injected humor and a touch of industry-savvy cynicism into the film. His presence added texture to the supporting cast and highlighted the way Holly navigated different worlds, socialite circles, literary spheres, and the entertainment business. Mickey Rooney's portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi, Holly's upstairs neighbor, remains one of the most controversial aspects of the film. Cast in a comedic role, Rooney, a white actor, wore makeup and prosthetics to portray a Japanese character in an exaggerated and stereotypical manner. At the time, this performance was largely accepted by mainstream audiences, but it has since been widely criticized for its racism and cultural insensitivity. Rooney, who had a long career as a child star and versatile actor, later expressed regret over the role. The casting and portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi remain a significant blemish on the film's legacy and serve as a reminder of Hollywood's troubled history with representation. Another notable actor in the film is José Luis de Villalonga, who played the wealthy Brazilian diplomat José da Silva Pereira. While his role was not large, his character was essential to the plot, as Holly initially sees him as her ticket to financial and social security. Villalonga, a Spanish aristocrat and actor, brought an air of old-world sophistication and mystery to the role, aligning well with Holly's fantasy of escaping to a more glamorous life. Overall, Breakfast at Tiffany's features a carefully selected cast that contributed significantly to the film's success and lasting appeal. Audrey Hepburn's transformative performance redefined her public persona and solidified her as a cinematic legend. George Peppard's restrained yet emotionally resonant portrayal of Paul gave the film its grounded emotional center. The supporting cast added layers of humor, tension, and realism that enriched the story's fabric. The film served as a major milestone in many of the actors' careers. For Hepburn, it was perhaps the most iconic role of her life, one that fused her acting talent with her personal style and grace. For Peppard, it was a career highlight that introduced him to a global audience. While some casting decisions, particularly Rooney's, have aged poorly, the ensemble's overall contribution to the film's legacy is undeniable. Breakfast at Tiffany's remains a film in which performance, persona, and character blend seamlessly to create a lasting cinematic impression. When Breakfast at Tiffany's premiered in 1961, it arrived at a cultural crossroads, an era teetering between the post-war conservatism of the 1950s and the radical shifts that would define the 1960s. In this liminal space, the film captured imaginations and sparked new ways of thinking about fashion, femininity, love, independence, and urban life. Its cultural impact has endured for decades, infiltrating everything from memes and fashion to art, music, advertising, and social discourse. While not without controversy, Breakfast at Tiffany's has remained embedded in the public consciousness as both a symbol of glamour and a reflection of societal evolution. One of the most immediate and lasting cultural impacts of the film lies in its fashion. Audrey Hepburn's portrayal of Holly Golightly, specifically her appearance in the opening scene, dressed in a sleek black Givenchy dress, oversized sunglasses, a pearl necklace, and hair in a perfect chignon, became a landmark moment in fashion history. The little black dress, once considered too simple or funereal for elegant women, was redefined by this scene. It has since become a staple of Western women's fashion, symbolizing both sophistication and simplicity. Hepburn's look has been replicated in Halloween costumes, fashion editorials, magazine covers, and pop culture tributes for generations. Beyond aesthetics, Holly Golightly herself became an emblem of a new kind of woman. Although the character is undeniably problematic by modern standards, at the time she represented a unique kind of female independence that was rarely seen on screen. She lived alone, had financial agency, albeit through questionable means, and dictated the terms of her relationships. This portrayal resonated with women at the beginning of the feminist movement, particularly in the early 1960s, when traditional domestic roles were being questioned and redefined. Holly's bohemian lifestyle, emotional independence, and unapologetic individuality made her an icon for women who sought alternatives to the typical housewife archetype. Breakfast at Tiffany's also helped to shape the romanticized idea of New York City as a place of endless possibility, stylish detachment, and bittersweet beauty. The city becomes more than a backdrop, it's a character in itself. The film's sweeping shots of Manhattan, cozy brownstone apartments, and late-night cab rides gave audiences a window into urban life that was both gritty and magical. In the decades since, this image of New York has been echoed in countless films, television shows, novels, and even advertisements. Shows like Sex and the City and films like When Harry Met Sally owe a stylistic and thematic debt to the romanticization of urban life first popularized by Breakfast at Tiffany's. In music, the film has also made a mark, most notably through the song Moon River, written by Henry Mancini and Johnny Mercer, and performed by Audrey Hepburn herself in a tender scene by the window with a guitar. The song won the Academy Award for Best Original Song. Its wistful melody and poetic lyrics captured the emotional undercurrents of the film: loneliness, longing, and a search for belonging. The song has since been covered by dozens of artists and referenced in popular culture, and it remains one of the most beloved cinematic songs ever recorded. Its inclusion in the film added a lyrical emotional depth that resonated across generations. The influence of the film extended into literature and media beyond film. Writers, artists, and musicians began referencing Holly Golightly or elements of the film to explore themes of longing, identity, and performative femininity. She became an archetype, a fragile dreamer masking vulnerability behind charm and style. Artists like Andy Warhol, who emerged in the same decade, often embraced and deconstructed these symbols of commercial beauty and fame. The merging of pop culture and high art was, in some ways, foreshadowed by the blending of aesthetic gloss and emotional complexity in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Holly Golightly's character also played a role in the evolution of female characters in romantic comedies. Prior to this film, female leads were often written in relation to male characters: the doting wife, the virtuous girlfriend, or the damsel in distress. Holly, however, had her own agenda, her own narrative, and her own moral compass. While she certainly needed saving in some ways, she also resisted being caged, as one of the film's metaphors suggests. This was radical in an era that still heavily policed women's sexuality and autonomy. Her emotional detachment, lighthearted promiscuity, and existential searching paved the way for more complex and flawed female characters in later films. Beyond film and fashion, Breakfast at Tiffany's entered the cultural lexicon through merchandising and iconography. Posters of Audrey Hepburn as Holly have become dorm room staples, symbols of aspirational femininity and timeless beauty. The phrase "breakfast at Tiffany's" itself conjures up images of elegance and wistful daydreaming. Brands have used its imagery and tone to sell everything from perfumes to handbags to coffee. The actual Tiffany and Company store on Fifth Avenue even became a tourist destination, drawing fans eager to stand where Holly once did, coffee and croissant in hand. The film's impact can also be seen in parody and satire. Saturday Night Live and other sketch shows have spoofed the famous scenes, while comedians and writers have used Holly Golightly as shorthand for a particular kind of superficial depth or fashionable melancholy. Even the 1995 hit song by Deep Blue Something, also titled Breakfast at Tiffany's, referenced the film as a symbol of last-ditch romantic hope. And I said, "What about Breakfast at Tiffany's?" She said, "I think I remember the film. Here, the movie serves as a shared cultural touchpoint, a nostalgic reference that helps define emotional connection." Of course, the film is not without its problematic elements, and these too have become part of its cultural footprint. The portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi by Mickey Rooney has become one of the most widely criticized examples of racist caricature in Hollywood history. The character is an exaggerated, offensive stereotype of a Japanese man, played by a white actor in yellowface with fake teeth and an over-the-top accent. Over time, the backlash has grown, and many screenings and platforms now include content warnings or offer contextual commentary. This aspect of the film has sparked important conversations about race, representation, and the legacy of Orientalism in Western media. In recent years, discussions of Breakfast at Tiffany's have often revolved around how to reconcile its beauty and charm with its flaws and cultural insensitivities. For some, Holly Golightly's character is a proto-feminist symbol of freedom and resilience. For others, she represents a kind of romanticized escapism that glosses over real struggles with mental health, poverty, or identity. Similarly, the film's dazzling surface can obscure the sadness and loneliness that lie underneath, emotions that still resonate today. The making of Breakfast at Tiffany's was as layered and fascinating as the film itself. What began as an attempt to adapt Truman Capote's novella into a palatable Hollywood feature quickly became a complex dance between artistic vision, studio pressures, star power, and directorial compromise. Behind the polished surface of the final film lies a production story filled with creative conflicts, unexpected triumphs, iconic decisions, and lasting anecdotes that have become part of film history. At the center of the behind-the-scenes story is the challenge of adapting Truman Capote's novella. Published in 1958, the original story was grittier, darker, and less romantic than the final film. Holly Golightly, in Capote's writing, was not a charming socialite with a whimsical streak, but a call girl living on the margins of high society, masking her vulnerability behind a carefully cultivated persona. Capote's novella ended with ambiguity and emotional detachment, far removed from the romantic resolution the film offered. As the adaptation process began, it quickly became clear that the studio, Paramount Pictures, intended to soften Holly's character and make her more appealing to mainstream audiences. Capote was heavily involved early in the process and had strong opinions about casting. He famously wanted Marilyn Monroe to play Holly, believing she had the raw sensuality and underlying sadness to embody the character as he had written her. Monroe's acting coach, Paula Strasberg, reportedly advised her to turn down the role, warning that it would damage her image. When Audrey Hepburn was cast instead, Capote was publicly vocal in his disappointment, stating that the decision was a mistake. However, director Blake Edwards had a different vision. He saw in Hepburn a rare combination of grace, mystery, and intelligence that could reframe Holly Golightly in a way that retained the character's spirit while making her more nuanced and sympathetic to moviegoers. The casting of George Peppard as Paul Varjak also raised some eyebrows. While he brought a thoughtful energy to the role, tensions reportedly arose between him and the rest of the creative team. Peppard was known to be serious and occasionally difficult on set. Blake Edwards and Audrey Hepburn reportedly clashed with him on occasion due to his intensity and methodical approach, which sometimes clashed with the lighter tone the director sought. Despite these tensions, the final on-screen chemistry between Hepburn and Peppard came through in a subtle, intimate way, lending the film a deeper emotional resonance. Filming took place primarily in New York City, which was a significant and expensive choice at the time. Most studio films were still being shot on backlots in Los Angeles, but the decision to film on location added authenticity and visual texture to the movie. One of the most iconic scenes, Holly standing in front of Tiffany and company with a pastry and coffee, was shot early in the morning to avoid crowds. According to crew accounts, the scene was challenging to film. Fifth Avenue had to be shut down briefly, and Hepburn was reportedly nervous and unsure how to perform the simple act of eating on camera. Despite her anxiety, the moment was captured beautifully and has since become one of the most memorable images in film history. Interiors were filmed at Paramount Studios in Los Angeles, where set designers recreated Holly's apartment with whimsical, almost surreal design elements. The use of a clawfoot bathtub as a couch and the peculiar mix of bohemian decor and minimalist space helped reflect Holly's transient, improvisational lifestyle. The production design was carefully constructed to convey both a sense of charm and incompleteness, mirroring Holly herself, who is both captivating and perpetually unanchored. Director Blake Edwards, known for his work in comedy and later for the Pink Panther series, brought a stylish, occasionally farcical tone to the film. While he injected the story with warmth and romance, he also walked a fine line between satire and sincerity. Edwards was also responsible for many of the film's most memorable visual motifs, including the recurring image of the fire escape, which became a symbol of escape, freedom, and emotional vulnerability. The final scene, Holly and Paul embracing in the rain, with Moon River swelling in the background, was a departure from Capote's story, but encapsulated Edwards' desire to end the film with emotional resolution rather than ambiguity. Music played a critical role during production, particularly the inclusion of Moon River. The song, written by Henry Mancini and Johnny Mercer, was initially composed with Hepburn's limited vocal range in mind. When early studio executives suggested cutting the song, Hepburn famously responded, "Over my dead body." Her loyalty to the song and belief in its emotional power helped preserve one of the film's most iconic scenes. Mancini later recalled the moment as one of the most critical turning points during production. The song not only won an Academy Award but also became a standard covered by dozens of artists over the years. Another point of contention during production was the character of Mr. Yunioshi. Blake Edwards cast Mickey Rooney in the role, a decision that was seen as comedic at the time but has since become one of the film's most criticized elements. The exaggerated makeup, prosthetic teeth, and offensive accent were intended as slapstick humor, but have aged poorly. Even during production, some crew members expressed discomfort with the portrayal, but the studio pressed ahead, driven by the popularity of Rooney's comedic performances. Decades later, both Edwards and Rooney would express regret over the decision. The inclusion of this character has become a case study in Hollywood's history of racial insensitivity, prompting reevaluations of the film in modern contexts. On set, Audrey Hepburn was widely regarded as professional, collaborative, and generous with her colleagues. However, she faced challenges during production, particularly in capturing Holly's more carefree and chaotic side. Hepburn, known for her poise and control, found it difficult to portray the uninhibited, party-loving aspects of the character. She worked closely with Edwards to find a balance, using small gestures, facial expressions, and vocal inflections to suggest deeper layers beneath Holly's playful exterior. Her dedication to the role was evident in her willingness to rehearse extensively and take direction with humility. One memorable anecdote from filming involved the scene where Holly throws a wild party in her apartment. The scene, chaotic and filled with physical comedy, was meticulously choreographed. Extras were cast for their ability to improvise and stay in character, while camera work was designed to move fluidly through the cramped set. Edwards shot the sequence with a semi-documentary style, allowing actors to move and react naturally. The result was a scene that captured the absurdity and charm of Holly's world in a single dizzying tableau. Breakfast at Tiffany's tells a story that, on its surface, appears to be a light romantic comedy, but beneath its polished exterior lies a narrative rich with emotional complexity, unspoken trauma, and existential searching. The film follows Holly Golightly, a young woman living in New York City who floats through life as a self-styled socialite and companion to wealthy men. Her journey, as well as that of Paul Varjak, a struggling writer who becomes her neighbor and confidant, unfolds in a series of character-driven moments that blend romance, comedy, and melancholy. The plot is episodic yet emotionally coherent, using key turning points and character revelations to develop themes of love, loneliness, and the search for identity. The film opens with one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history. In the quiet early hours of morning, Holly Golightly steps out of a cab in front of Tiffany and Company on Fifth Avenue. She wears a long black dress, pearls, sunglasses, and a messy updo as she sips coffee and nibbles a croissant while gazing into the jewelry store windows. It's a silent, atmospheric introduction that immediately tells us something important. This is a woman who dreams, who performs her identity, and who romanticizes a life of luxury and security that remains just out of reach. From that iconic opening, the story transitions into the narrative proper. Paul Varjak, a writer who has published one book and now relies financially on a wealthy older woman, moves into Holly's building. Their first meeting is chaotic and revealing. Paul is awakened early in the morning by Holly, who's being chased by a man she was entertaining and needs refuge. She bursts into his apartment, instantly establishing her as spontaneous, unpredictable, and reliant on charm to navigate her world. Paul is intrigued and somewhat puzzled by her, setting the foundation for their evolving relationship. As the story unfolds, Paul and Holly begin to form a friendship. She refers to him as Fred, after her brother, which creates both emotional intimacy and a degree of detachment. Holly is a character in constant performance, reinventing herself, telling contradictory stories, and maintaining a carefully curated image of being carefree and elusive. Paul, meanwhile, is more grounded and observant, gradually peeling back Holly's many layers to reveal the vulnerable woman beneath the stylish surface. The plot does not follow a traditional three-act structure in a strict sense, but rather unfolds in a sequence of vignettes, each of which adds dimension to the characters and deepens their relationship. The first major turning point comes when Holly reveals her backstory during a conversation with Paul. She confesses that her real name is Lula Mae Barnes, that she grew up poor in rural Texas, and that she was married at a young age to a man named Doc Golightly. This revelation shifts the audience's understanding of Holly from a quirky city girl to a person running from her past, trying to reinvent herself in a new world. The narrative continues to explore Holly's dualities. She is independent yet dependent, joyful yet sad, glamorous yet lost. She maintains a transactional lifestyle, dating wealthy men and collecting powder room money in exchange for her company. But she also demonstrates deep affection for her brother Fred, the only person with whom she seems to share a truly selfless bond. Her fixation on securing a future with a rich man is tied to her desire to create a safe, stable life for both herself and Fred. As Holly pursues relationships with various suitors, most notably the wealthy Brazilian diplomat José da Silva Pereira, Paul begins to fall in love with her. His feelings grow as he watches her navigate the highs and lows of her social life. His romantic interest, however, is complicated by his own arrangement with 2E Fawkinson, the woman who supports him financially. Both Paul and Holly are caught in morally ambiguous relationships built on dependence and avoidance, and part of the film's emotional arc lies in their mutual recognition of this shared reality. One of the more pivotal scenes occurs during a visit to the library, where Holly learns that Paul is a published author. This moment is small but significant. It shows Holly's genuine curiosity and interest in Paul's identity beyond his role as her neighbor. It also demonstrates Paul's discomfort with his own artistic stagnation, which mirrors Holly's fear of emotional stasis. Both characters are creative, lost, and seeking a kind of freedom they don't quite understand. The film builds toward its emotional climax through a series of escalating conflicts. Holly is devastated by news of her brother Fred's death while he was serving in the army. This tragedy strips away her facade more powerfully than anything else in the film. She breaks down in her apartment, vulnerable and inconsolable. It is the first moment in the narrative when she loses control entirely, and Paul sees her not as a fantasy or object of affection, but as a human being consumed by grief and fear. Soon after, Holly becomes entangled in a legal scandal. One of her former companions, the incarcerated mobster Sally Tomato, has been sending her weekly payments under the guise of visiting him for weather reports in prison. It is revealed that she has unknowingly become involved in money laundering, and her name is linked to criminal activity. She is arrested and released on bail, but the scandal causes José to end their relationship. This moment represents a collapse of Holly's carefully constructed dream. Her fantasy of escaping to Brazil and starting anew is destroyed, forcing her to confront the realities of her choices and circumstances. The final act begins with Holly's decision to leave New York and start over yet again. She plans to go to Brazil alone, leaving behind her cat, symbolically unnamed throughout the film, and severing emotional ties to Paul. Her philosophy, which she articulates throughout the film, is that people should not belong to each other. She resists commitment and emotional intimacy, viewing love as a form of entrapment. Paul, however, challenges this worldview. In the film's most emotionally charged scene, he confronts Holly in a cab and delivers a passionate monologue, telling her that running away will not bring her peace, and that love, even if imperfect, is worth choosing. The climax reaches its peak when Holly throws her cat out of the cab in the pouring rain, an act that symbolizes her continued resistance to attachment. But something shifts in her. She exits the cab, searches desperately through the alley, and finally finds the cat, wet and shivering. Paul joins her, and the two embrace in the rain, finally united in vulnerability and acceptance. The scene is scored by the instrumental version of Moon River, evoking the emotional longing that has underscored their relationship throughout the film. The rain acts as a cleansing force, washing away illusions and bringing clarity. The ending is a significant departure from Truman Capote's novella, which concluded with Holly disappearing, her future unknown. The film, however, opts for romantic resolution. It closes with a kiss, a reunion, and the possibility of a shared future, something Holly has spent the entire film resisting. Whether this ending is a genuine transformation or a moment of temporary surrender is open to interpretation, but it provides emotional closure that many audiences found satisfying. Beneath the glamorous surface and romantic narrative of Breakfast at Tiffany's lies a deeply introspective exploration of identity, love, freedom, fear, and self-deception. The film, adapted from Truman Capote's novella, is rich with themes and symbolism that enhance its emotional depth and cultural resonance. While much of the dialogue and character behavior appears lighthearted or whimsical, these surface elements often mask more serious questions about the human condition. The story's central characters, Holly Golightly and Paul Varjak, embody contradictions and internal struggles, and the world they inhabit is filled with objects, relationships, and choices that serve as metaphors for their emotional lives. One of the most prominent themes in Breakfast at Tiffany's is the tension between freedom and belonging. Holly Golightly is a character obsessed with the idea of freedom. She refuses to be caged, a metaphor she uses to explain her reluctance to commit to any person, place, or idea. She moves through life with an almost pathological need to stay untethered, constantly reinventing herself, shifting identities, and avoiding emotional attachment. Her apartment, sparsely furnished and full of mismatched, makeshift items, reflects her transient lifestyle and psychological impermanence. She lives as if always ready to leave, to escape, to vanish into a new version of herself. Paul Varjak, by contrast, represents a different relationship to freedom. Though he is similarly compromised, dependent on an older woman for financial support, he yearns for authenticity, connection, and a sense of personal purpose. As the film progresses, Paul becomes a kind of emotional anchor, offering Holly a mirror through which she might see the possibility of a life that is not dictated by fear and avoidance. His character arc is subtle but meaningful, as he transitions from passive observer to someone willing to confront Holly and challenge her self-destructive detachment. The theme of identity and reinvention runs deeply throughout the film. Holly is a character who has erased her past and constructed a new persona to survive. She has changed her name, left behind her rural upbringing, and adopted a life based on charm, seduction, and illusion. She creates elaborate fantasies about her relationships, her social standing, and her future. In doing so, she shields herself from vulnerability, but also isolates herself from real intimacy. This theme resonates in the way she tells stories, always slightly exaggerated, often contradictory, as if she is constantly rewriting her own mythology. This fluidity of identity is symbolized by her cat, which remains unnamed throughout most of the film. Holly refuses to name the cat because, in her view, neither of them belongs to anyone. The cat becomes a living metaphor for her philosophy of detachment. It is not until the film's final moments, when Holly embraces both the cat and Paul, that she begins to relinquish this ideology and accept the risks of love and commitment. Naming the cat, or rather, acknowledging its emotional value, is a symbolic act of transformation for Holly. It marks her willingness to stop running and to confront her need for connection. Another central theme is loneliness, which permeates the characters' lives despite the glamorous settings and lively parties. Holly surrounds herself with people, lovers, friends, party guests, but remains emotionally isolated. Her conversations are often performative, her relationships superficial. Even her moments of joy are tinged with a sense of displacement. She longs for a place or state of being where she feels truly safe and at peace. This longing is embodied in her love for Tiffany's, the jewelry store where she claims to find a momentary sense of calm. She explains that when she's feeling the mean reds, a deeper, more existential anxiety than simple depression, she visits Tiffany's to feel grounded. The store, with its pristine displays and sense of order, becomes a symbol of the security and stability she cannot find in her own life. Tiffany's is also symbolic of material aspiration and the illusion of happiness. Holly romanticizes wealth and status, believing that if she marries a rich man, she will finally be able to escape her insecurities and past trauma. Yet, the film subtly critiques this fantasy. Her relationships with wealthy men are hollow, and her pursuit of them often leads to disappointment or humiliation. The idea that financial security can heal emotional wounds is shown to be a myth, and Holly's eventual shift toward emotional rather than material fulfillment is framed as a necessary step towards self-acceptance. The concept of performance and self-deception is another theme that runs through the film. Holly is always performing, whether for others or for herself. Her playful demeanor, quirky outfits, and breezy dialogue are part of a carefully constructed image. Even her signature line, "I'm a wild thing," is both a declaration of freedom and a shield against intimacy. The film frequently suggests that this performance is exhausting and unsustainable. Paul, too, is performing a role, pretending to be content with his kept man status, denying his artistic frustrations, and masking his feelings for Holly. Both characters are in emotional disguises, and their journey is one of gradual revelation and honesty. The rain in the final scene acts as a powerful symbol of emotional cleansing and transformation. Throughout the film, Holly avoids confronting her pain or acknowledging her need for others. But in the rain, she is finally stripped of pretense. Her makeup is smudged, her carefully maintained appearance is undone, and she is left with raw emotion. The act of searching for her cat in the rain is a metaphor for reclaiming the parts of herself she had rejected, her need for love, her capacity to care, her vulnerability. The kiss in the rain, then, is not just romantic, it is redemptive. It signals a possible future built on authenticity rather than illusion. Moon River, the film's theme song, encapsulates many of the story's emotional undercurrents. The lyrics speak to longing, dreams, and a journey toward an undefined future. Two drifters, off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. The melody is gentle, wistful, and haunting, reinforcing the film's themes of emotional searching and fragile hope. Holly sings the song early in the film while strumming a guitar on her fire escape, revealing a rare moment of sincerity. It is a quiet, almost private expression of the very longing she otherwise hides behind humor and sophistication. The use of physical spaces in the film also carries symbolic meaning. Holly's apartment is a reflection of her inner chaos, charming but unstable, elegant yet incomplete. Paul's apartment, by contrast, is more orderly and subdued, suggesting a desire for stability that he has yet to fully achieve. The fire escape, where Holly often retreats, functions as a liminal space between inside and outside, safety and risk, solitude and connection. It is on the fire escape where Paul and Holly share some of their most intimate moments, suggesting that it is in these in-between spaces where truth can finally emerge. Holly's parties are symbolic of the performative nature of her social life. They are chaotic, colorful, and full of eccentric characters, but ultimately empty. The visual style and cinematography of Breakfast at Tiffany's play a crucial role in shaping the film's tone, emotional depth, and timeless elegance. While the story and characters provide the emotional core, the way the film looks, its color palette, composition, camera movements, and visual motifs elevate it to an iconic cinematic experience. Director Blake Edwards and cinematographer Franz Planer created a visual language that blends romanticism with realism, style with substance, and charm with melancholy. Their choices contribute not only to the film's atmosphere but also to its deeper emotional and thematic resonance. The first thing that strikes viewers is the sophistication of the film's visual design. Filmed in color using Technicolor, Breakfast at Tiffany's embraces a refined palette of soft pastels, rich blacks, shimmering silvers, and warm golds. These choices are not merely aesthetic, but symbolic. Holly's black dress in the opening scene, contrasted against the soft yellow light from Tiffany's windows and the cool gray of morning New York, sets the tone for the entire film, a mixture of glamour and loneliness. Color is used thoughtfully throughout the film to reflect mood, identity, and transformation. New York City is not just a backdrop in the film, it's an essential visual and emotional presence. Many scenes were shot on location, which was a bold and costly choice at the time. The city is presented in a romanticized yet authentic way, sleek, stylish, vibrant, but also occasionally gritty and impersonal. Edwards and Planer use wide shots to capture the city's grandeur and intimacy. From tree-lined brownstone streets to bustling avenues and the quiet solitude of dawn, New York is visualized as both a playground and a prison for the film's emotionally displaced characters. Camera movement throughout Breakfast at Tiffany's is subtle and elegant. The cinematography rarely calls attention to itself, but it is meticulously crafted to support the performances and emotions of each scene. Planer uses smooth dolly shots and graceful pans that follow characters as they move through space, suggesting a sense of flow and continuity. This movement often mirrors Holly's restless spirit. She's constantly in motion, never settling. There is rarely a static shot of her for too long. Instead, the camera glides with her as she floats through parties, rooms, and city streets. Even when she's sitting still, the framing suggests that she's emotionally unsettled. Close-ups are used sparingly but effectively. When Holly experiences moments of vulnerability, such as when she sings Moon River on the fire escape or breaks down after hearing about her brother's death, the camera gently lingers on her face, capturing fleeting expressions and subtle shifts in emotion. Planer's lighting in these scenes is soft and diffused, highlighting Audrey Hepburn's natural features while also emphasizing emotional intimacy. These moments stand in contrast to the more energetic, bustling scenes and allow the audience to connect with Holly beneath her glamorous surface. The film also makes extensive use of contrast in its visual storytelling. Day and night, interior and exterior, light and shadow, all are used to communicate the duality of the characters and their emotional states. Daytime scenes tend to reflect the polished, performative aspects of Holly's life: brunches, shopping, social calls. Night scenes, by contrast, often explore her inner loneliness and uncertainty. Shadows stretch across her apartment, lights flicker in the streets, and the darkness creates a sense of isolation despite the city's constant movement. The interplay of light and dark is especially evident in Holly's apartment, where the windows cast long shadows on the walls and the sparse furnishings create a feeling of emptiness. Holly's apartment is itself a masterpiece of visual storytelling. The production design is minimalist but purposeful. The use of a claw-footed bathtub as a couch, the unfinished walls, the lack of personal items, these elements speak volumes about Holly's inner life. Visually, the space is simultaneously cozy and incomplete, stylish and hollow. The lighting in the apartment shifts depending on Holly's emotional state: warm and golden when she's feeling confident or seductive, cooler and muted during moments of vulnerability. The apartment becomes a visual extension of her psychological landscape. In terms of shot composition, Planer and Edwards favor balanced framing and symmetrical setups, particularly in scenes that explore emotional connection. For instance, when Holly and Paul sit side by side on the fire escape, or when they shop together at Tiffany's, the shots are framed with the two characters equally weighted in the frame. This visual balance emphasizes their growing emotional symmetry, their slow movement toward mutual understanding. Conversely, scenes in which Holly feels isolated or disconnected often place her on the edge of the frame, reinforcing her emotional distance from those around her. A particularly striking example of visual symbolism comes in the form of the film's recurring image of windows and fire escapes. Holly is often seen through a window or standing on her fire escape, positioning her between the interior and exterior world, between safety and exposure. This imagery reinforces her role as someone who is both part of the world and apart from it. The fire escape is also a site of emotional revelation. It is where Holly sings, where Paul first begins to understand her, and where the audience sees her without the mask. Visually, it represents a liminal space, a place where transformation can occur. Another important visual motif is the mirror. Holly frequently looks into mirrors throughout the film, adjusting her hair, applying lipstick, or checking her appearance. These moments are more than vanity, they underscore the performative nature of her identity. The mirror becomes a symbol of self-curation and self-deception, a reminder that Holly is constantly constructing the version of herself she presents to the world. In one quiet moment, she looks into the mirror after receiving tragic news and doesn't adjust her appearance, signaling a break from her usual performance and a glimpse of her true self. The costume design, created by Hubert de Givenchy, also plays a critical role in the film's visual style and cinematographic choices. Givenchy's designs complement Planer's cinematography by using texture, silhouette, and contrast to enhance mood and character. Holly's black dress in the opening scene, her oversized sunglasses, and her layered pearl necklace are not just iconic fashion statements. They're carefully chosen elements that work harmoniously with lighting and framing. The simplicity of her wardrobe allows her face and expressions to become focal points, while the stark lines of her clothing reflect the emotional barriers she maintains. The film's visual language also plays with spatial relationships to explore emotional proximity and distance. In scenes where Holly and Paul are emotionally close, they are often filmed within the same frame, in tight spaces, or moving together. In scenes where tension or misunderstanding arises, the camera creates physical distance between them, placing them on opposite sides of the room, separated by furniture, walls, or even crowds of people. This spatial choreography is subtle but effective in communicating the emotional dynamics of their relationship without relying solely on dialogue. The soundtrack and sound design of Breakfast at Tiffany's play a central role in shaping the emotional tone of the film. They help tell the story not only through the characters and dialogue but also through a deeply atmospheric and poetic use of sound and music. Composed by Henry Mancini with lyrics by Johnny Mercer, the film's score is perhaps most famous for the hauntingly beautiful song Moon River, but its contribution extends far beyond a single melody. Through a careful blend of orchestration, ambient sounds, musical themes, and sonic motifs, the soundscape of Breakfast at Tiffany's weaves together mood, place, character, and emotion in a way that remains unforgettable decades after its release. At the heart of the soundtrack is Moon River, which serves as the film's emotional anchor. Written specifically for Audrey Hepburn's limited vocal range, the song is introduced early in the film when Holly golightly gently strums her guitar and sings it while perched on the fire escape outside her apartment window. This moment is not just iconic, it's intimate, sincere, and unguarded. The melody is simple, with only a few chords, and the lyrics evoke a sense of longing, freedom, and the elusive search for a better life. The river becomes a metaphor for dreams that drift just out of reach. Its placement in the film, quiet, personal, and undisturbed by background noise, marks one of the few moments when Holly allows herself to be seen without artifice. Throughout the movie, Moon River is reprised in various forms, each time with a slightly different orchestration to reflect the changing emotional context. Sometimes it appears as a sweeping orchestral arrangement underscoring a romantic or reflective moment. At other times, it's played more quietly and melancholically, representing Holly's solitude or uncertainty. This use of musical reprise provides a kind of emotional continuity and allows the audience to track Holly's psychological state even when she does not verbalize it. It also binds the narrative together through a recurring sonic identity. Henry Mancini's full score balances elegance with restraint. Unlike some films that flood scenes with music, Breakfast at Tiffany's uses its soundtrack judiciously. Many scenes rely on ambient sounds or silence to create a sense of realism or emotional rawness. When music is present, it's often used to elevate emotion rather than direct it. The orchestration is rich but never overwhelming. Strings swell during moments of romance, woodwinds and piano provide levity or whimsy, and brass adds a subtle touch of sophistication. Mancini's style is smooth, jazz-inflected, and deeply lyrical, perfectly complementing the film's blend of melancholy and charm. In terms of sound design, the film was crafted during an era when sound editing and mixing were done entirely in analog, requiring a high level of craftsmanship and planning. The soundscape of the city plays a key role in immersing the audience in Holly's world. Street noise, honking taxis, murmuring crowds, and distant voices filter in through the windows of her apartment, reminding viewers of the urban environment's constant presence. This ambient noise grounds the film in a particular reality: the loneliness of city life, the anonymity of crowded spaces, and the fleeting nature of human connection. The party scenes offer some of the most intricate sound design in the film. When Holly hosts her chaotic gathering early in the story, the soundtrack becomes a multi-layered tapestry of laughter, overlapping conversations, clinking glasses, popping champagne, footsteps, and background jazz. The cacophony is controlled yet vibrant, creating an atmosphere that is both exhilarating and overwhelming. The sound editing in these scenes ensures that the viewer is immersed in the energy and glamour of Holly's social life, while subtly communicating the emotional emptiness that underlies it. Dialogue and music are carefully balanced throughout the film. In many romantic dramas, especially those from the 1960s, music often competes with or drowns out dialogue. Breakfast at Tiffany's avoids this pitfall by allowing key conversations to unfold with minimal background interference. This is especially evident in emotionally significant moments, such as Holly's emotional breakdown after learning of her brother's death, or her final confrontation with Paul in the taxi. Here, the music steps back or disappears entirely, allowing the performances and ambient silence to carry the emotional weight. The film also uses silence in powerful ways. During scenes of introspection or grief, such as when Holly stares out her window or sits quietly in her dim apartment, the absence of music or sound emphasizes her isolation. Silence becomes a sonic void that reflects the emotional void she experiences. This approach is subtle but highly effective, allowing the audience to feel the emptiness rather than be told about it. In scenes of romantic tension or growth, Mancini's music acts like an invisible thread, pulling the characters together. Light piano themes and gentle string accompaniments often appear during Holly and Paul's bonding moments, giving their developing relationship a sense of warmth and tenderness. These musical cues are not heavy-handed. Rather, they enhance the chemistry without imposing it. This allows the audience to feel the romantic build-up organically. One particularly memorable musical moment, aside from Moon River, is the background jazz music during Holly's party. Jazz, with its improvisational nature and urban roots, reflects Holly's free-spirited but erratic personality. It also connects to the cultural ambience of early 1960s New York: hip, stylish, unpredictable. The jazz tracks in the film add spontaneity and playfulness to scenes, especially those involving Holly's interactions with various suitors and acquaintances. Mancini's ability to combine classical orchestration with elements of jazz was groundbreaking. His score for Breakfast at Tiffany's won the Academy Award for Best Original Score, a recognition of both its musicality and its emotional nuance. The soundtrack also helped popularize the concept of film scores as standalone musical works. Moon River became a chart-topping hit and has since been covered by artists across genres, from Frank Sinatra to Aretha Franklin, from Andy Williams to modern indie musicians. It has become one of the most iconic movie songs of all time, its lyrics and melody inseparable from the image of Audrey Hepburn in her black dress and pearls. In addition to orchestrated music, the film includes diegetic sound moments that help build the world Holly inhabits. The sound of her cat meowing, the ticking of a clock, the clatter of items in her kitchen, and the ambient murmur of a department store all contribute to a sense of realism. These everyday sounds contrast with the dreamlike quality of the score, highlighting the dual nature of Holly's existence, between fantasy and reality, between her carefully curated image and her internal chaos. In terms of innovation, Breakfast at Tiffany's was one of the early examples of a Hollywood film where the soundtrack became part of its brand. The musical themes were not only integral to the storytelling but also commercially viable, packaged and sold as records, replayed on radio, and licensed for other media. This approach paved the way for later films to treat their soundtracks as both narrative tools and marketing assets. When Breakfast at Tiffany's premiered in October 1961, it was met with considerable excitement and anticipation. The film, adapted from Truman Capote's 1958 novella, had the star power of Audrey Hepburn, the stylish direction of Blake Edwards, and a sophisticated marketing campaign that promised glamour, romance, and a glimpse into New York's high society. Audiences responded enthusiastically, and the movie quickly became a box office hit. However, the film's reception was not universally positive. While it earned accolades and established itself as a cultural milestone, it also generated controversy, some of which has intensified with time. The critical discourse surrounding Breakfast at Tiffany's is complex, reflecting changing societal values and the film's multifaceted legacy. Initially, critics lauded the film for its charm, elegance, and Hepburn's standout performance. Many praised her portrayal of Holly Golightly as both stylish and vulnerable, balancing the character's eccentricities with emotional depth. Some reviews highlighted how she transformed what could have been a shallow or caricatured role into something genuinely moving. The Hollywood Reporter described her as enchanting, while other outlets noted her ability to evoke sympathy for a character who, in less capable hands, might have seemed merely frivolous. George Peppard's performance as Paul Varjak received more mixed reactions. Some critics appreciated his calm, understated presence, while others found him too passive or wooden in contrast to Hepburn's dynamic energy. Despite these reservations, his chemistry with Hepburn was generally considered convincing enough to anchor the romantic storyline. The screenplay by George Axelrod, known for his work on The 7-Year Itch, also drew mixed responses. Some appreciated the adaptation's wit and structure, while others criticized it for softening the darker elements of Capote's original story. In the novella, Holly is portrayed more explicitly as a call girl, and the narrative tone is more ambiguous and somber. The film, by contrast, romanticized and sanitized much of Holly's backstory to fit Hollywood standards of the time. This shift was accepted by many contemporary viewers, but has since become a point of criticism among literary and film scholars who argue that the film diluted Capote's vision. The biggest point of controversy, both at the time and especially in subsequent decades, was Mickey Rooney's portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi, Holly's Japanese landlord. Rooney, a white actor, was cast in yellowface and played the role with exaggerated prosthetic teeth, a stereotypical accent, and broad comedic mannerisms that relied on offensive racial caricatures. Even during the film's original release, some reviewers found the portrayal uncomfortable or out of place in an otherwise sophisticated production. However, it wasn't until later generations reevaluated the film through the lens of social awareness and racial sensitivity that this aspect became one of its most widely condemned elements. Modern critics and audiences have overwhelmingly rejected this portrayal, calling it racist and deeply offensive. The character has been cited in numerous discussions about Hollywood's history of racial insensitivity, and many contemporary viewings of the film include warnings or disclaimers. While Mickey Rooney himself defended the performance for many years, later in life he reportedly expressed regret over the role. The inclusion of Mr. Yunioshi has prompted some to question whether the film should continue to be celebrated without addressing this problematic element. Despite this, the film's reputation has remained largely intact among general audiences, many of whom regard the offensive character as a relic of its time rather than a reflection of the film's overall intent. Others argue that it's important to acknowledge and critique such portrayals without erasing the rest of the film's artistic achievements. In terms of accolades, Breakfast at Tiffany's was a major success during the award season. It received 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Actress for Audrey Hepburn, Best Adapted Screenplay for George Axelrod, and Best Art Direction. Henry Mancini's score won the Oscar for Best Original Score, and the film's signature song, Moon River, won Best Original Song. These awards not only affirmed the film's artistic merit but also helped solidify its place in cinematic history. Audrey Hepburn's performance, though nominated, did not win the Academy Award, losing to Sophia Loren for Two Women. Nevertheless, her role as Holly Golightly became one of the most iconic in film history. Her image from the opening scene, standing in front of Tiffany and company with a coffee and croissant, became a defining visual of 1960s cinema. Critics often reference this scene as a perfect encapsulation of the film's stylish tone and emotional undercurrent. Over the decades, critical reassessments of Breakfast at Tiffany's have continued. In the 1970s and 1980s, feminist scholars began to examine the film's portrayal of gender roles and romantic ideals. Holly's character, in particular, became a subject of debate. Was she a liberated woman exercising agency in a male-dominated world, or was she a fantasy figure created to appeal to male desire? Some argued that Holly represented a proto-feminist figure, unmarried, self-sufficient, and uninterested in conforming to traditional expectations. Others saw her as ultimately dependent on male validation and financial security, especially given how the story resolves. The 1990s and early 2000s saw the film gain renewed attention from fashion and pop culture critics. Audrey Hepburn's style in the film, designed by Hubert de Givenchy, was re-celebrated as timeless and influential. Fashion magazines, design schools, and even television shows reference the film as a visual benchmark for elegance and modern femininity. During this period, critics largely focused on aesthetics, glamour, and nostalgia, often overlooking the film's deeper social implications. In the past decade, the cultural conversation around Breakfast at Tiffany's has become more nuanced. While the film is still widely admired, especially for its visuals, music, and Hepburn's performance, there is also a growing awareness of its limitations and problematic elements. Critics today are more likely to present a balanced view, acknowledging the film's artistic strengths while not ignoring its dated racial and gender portrayals. It's worth noting that Truman Capote himself was deeply dissatisfied with the film. He had hoped for a grittier, more faithful adaptation of his novella and had publicly stated his disappointment with the casting of Audrey Hepburn over Marilyn Monroe, who he believed embodied the true essence of Holly. He also criticized the film's romanticized tone, feeling that it misrepresented the ambiguity and complexity of his original character. Though Capote's opinion did not affect the film's success, it has added an additional layer to its critical narrative. In academic circles, Breakfast at Tiffany's is often studied as an example of adaptation theory, how novels are translated into films and what is gained or lost in the process. The film's departure from the source material is often seen as a case study in Hollywood's tendency to domesticate or idealize complex literary characters to fit mainstream expectations. The legacy and influence of Breakfast at Tiffany's are vast, enduring, and multifaceted. More than 6 decades after its release, the film continues to captivate audiences, inspire artists, and shape cultural perceptions of glamour, independence, and romantic idealism. Its influence extends beyond cinema, reaching into fashion, music, literature, advertising, and even social behavior. It is not merely a classic film. It is a symbol, a reference point, and a cultural artifact that has helped define an era and continues to resonate in contemporary society. Perhaps the most immediate and recognizable legacy of the film is its visual aesthetic. Audrey Hepburn's portrayal of Holly Golightly has become one of the most iconic images in film history. The opening sequence, where she stands in front of Tiffany and company wearing a sleek black Givenchy dress, oversized sunglasses, pearls, and holding a paper coffee cup and pastry, has been reproduced, parodied, and referenced countless times. This image alone has cemented Holly Golightly, and by extension, Audrey Hepburn, as a symbol of timeless elegance and urban sophistication. It is regularly featured on posters, merchandise, editorial spreads, and fashion campaigns. Fashion designers continue to cite Breakfast at Tiffany's as a key influence on their collections. The collaboration between Audrey Hepburn and French designer Hubert de Givenchy helped set the standard for the idea of the modern woman in the 1960s. Hepburn's style in the film, From the little black dress to the trench coat and oversized accessories, redefined how women saw themselves in public spaces. It shifted cultural ideas about femininity, encouraging women to express themselves through minimalist yet bold fashion choices. Even today, the little black dress remains a staple in every fashion-conscious wardrobe, thanks in large part to its portrayal in this film. The film also played a role in elevating the status of Tiffany & Company, the luxury jewelry brand. Prior to the movie, Tiffany's was known primarily among the upper echelons of society, but the film gave it mass cultural visibility. Suddenly, a broader audience began associating Tiffany's with aspiration, romance, and beauty. The company experienced a notable rise in public interest and sales following the movie's release. Even now, Tiffany's maintains a connection to the film, often using golightly imagery in marketing materials and tourist experiences that celebrate its cinematic heritage. In cinema, Breakfast at Tiffany's helped set a template for the modern romantic comedy. Although it is technically a blend of romance and drama, the film's structure, tone, and character archetypes influenced decades of romantic storytelling. The idea of the quirky, elusive woman who hides her vulnerability behind a mask of charisma, commonly referred to in later decades as the manic pixie dream girl, can trace some of its origins to golightly. Likewise, the concept of two mismatched characters finding love through emotional growth and shared loneliness has been repeated in countless films that followed. The film's success also contributed to a shift in Hollywood's portrayal of female protagonists. Holly is not a traditional romantic heroine. She is morally ambiguous, financially motivated, emotionally complex, and sexually independent. While the movie softened the novella's edgier aspects, it still presented a woman who lived on her own terms. This portrayal paved the way for more complex and modern female leads in the 1960s and beyond. Films like Annie Hall, Working Girl, Pretty Woman, Sex and the City, and Amelie can all be seen as part of the lineage that Breakfast at Tiffany's helped initiate. In television, the film has been referenced and honored repeatedly. Shows like Gossip Girl, Mad Men, Gilmore Girls, The Simpsons, Family Guy, and Friends have all paid homage to Breakfast at Tiffany's in episodes that mimic its scenes or quote its lines. Sometimes these references are satirical, while other times they are nostalgic tributes that demonstrate the film's continued relevance. The movie has become a shared cultural language, something viewers recognize instantly, even if they haven't seen the full film. Musically, the film's theme song, Moon River, has also left an enormous legacy. The song became a classic in its own right, covered by countless artists across genres and generations. It is used in weddings, commercials, and film soundtracks, and it evokes a mood of wistfulness, longing, and romantic idealism that is universally understood. Moon River has become so strongly associated with Breakfast at Tiffany's that the two are inseparable. Its legacy as a piece of music is as significant as the film's visual identity. The influence of Breakfast at Tiffany's also extends to the marketing and merchandising of films. Its commercial success showed that movies could create powerful brand identities that transcended the screen. The film inspired everything from fashion lines to perfumes, makeup collections, and home decor items. Items such as black dresses, cigarette holders, pearls, and faux diamond accessories are routinely marketed under the golightly theme. Halloween costumes and themed parties continue to draw on its aesthetics. The film effectively bridged the gap between cinema and lifestyle branding, something now common in modern franchises. Educational institutions, especially in film studies, literature, and gender studies, frequently use Breakfast at Tiffany's as a case study in adaptation, character construction, and cultural representation. Students analyze how the film differs from Capote's novella, how it reflects the gender and racial attitudes of its time, and how its characters have become symbolic figures in broader cultural narratives. This scholarly attention ensures that the film's legacy continues in academic and intellectual circles, not just among fans and pop culture enthusiasts. Some of the film's most enduring lines, "I'm like Cat," where a couple of no-name slobs, or "people do belong to each other," have entered the collective memory. The dialogue, though sometimes stylized and theatrical, continues to be quoted in everyday conversation and on social media, often used to express feelings of longing, alienation, or romantic hope. The film's romantic resolution, set in the rain with Paul and Holly kissing in an alley while holding her cat, has become one of the most frequently referenced and replayed endings in romantic film history. It is used as shorthand for emotional closure, vulnerability, and the triumph of love over fear. This single scene has influenced numerous film endings that aim to leave audiences with a similar sense of catharsis. Beyond its aesthetic and narrative influence, Breakfast at Tiffany's has also had a more subtle but lasting impact on how people think about New York City. The film's portrayal of Manhattan as a place of mystery, sophistication, and possibility contributed to a romanticized vision of the city. Although many of the locations were constructed on studio sets or shot selectively to avoid grittier elements, the version of New York portrayed in the film inspired countless people to move to the city or dream of doing so. To this day, tours of Manhattan include stops at filming locations, especially the Tiffany and Company's storefront on Fifth Avenue. Breakfast at Tiffany's has resonated with audiences across multiple generations, creating a complex and evolving relationship between viewers and the film. This relationship reflects changing societal values, cultural shifts, and personal interpretations shaped by time, experience, and context. The film's reception among audiences is as layered as its narrative and visual style, ranging from deep emotional attachment and admiration to critical reconsideration and debate. When the film was first released in 1961, audiences were captivated by its charm, sophistication, and romance. For many, Holly Golightly represented a new kind of heroine, free-spirited, glamorous, and unconventional. She was unlike the typical, demure female leads of the 1950s, embodying a sense of independence and urbanity that resonated with viewers experiencing the social and cultural upheavals of the early 1960s. Many young women saw Holly as an aspirational figure, someone who navigated New York City with style and confidence, unbound by traditional norms. The film's depiction of the city itself as a place of possibility and reinvention added to this allure. Audiences were drawn to the film's blend of lightheartedness and melancholy. Holly's quirky, playful personality provided comic relief and whimsy, while the underlying themes of loneliness, longing, and vulnerability created an emotional depth that made her relatable. The iconic scene of Holly standing outside Tiffany's with her coffee and croissant became an emblem of optimism and the yearning for beauty and stability amidst uncertainty. This duality helped the film forge a strong emotional connection with its viewers. The romantic storyline, featuring the evolving relationship between Holly and Paul Varjak, offered audiences a hopeful narrative about love's transformative power. Many viewers related to the idea that people could change and open up emotionally despite past hardships or fears. The film's conclusion, with Holly finally embracing love and commitment, provided satisfying emotional closure that resonated with the era's prevailing values around relationships. Over the years, however, audience interpretations of Breakfast at Tiffany's have diversified and become more critical. Feminist critiques, for instance, have questioned Holly's portrayal as a woman who, while independent, is ultimately defined by her relationships with men and financial dependence on wealthy benefactors. Some viewers see Holly as embodying both empowerment and entrapment, someone who appears free but remains constrained by societal expectations and economic realities. This ambivalence invites audiences to reflect on the complexities of female autonomy in mid-20th century America. More recently, the film's racial insensitivity, particularly Mickey Rooney's portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi, has sparked discomfort and critical reassessment among audiences. What was once accepted or overlooked by many viewers is now recognized as offensive and harmful. This shift reflects broader societal changes in attitudes toward race, representation, and cultural respect. Many contemporary audiences struggle to reconcile their affection for the film's artistic qualities with their disapproval of this problematic element, leading to nuanced, often conflicted responses. The character of Holly Golightly herself has become a cultural symbol, subject to varied interpretations by different audience groups. For some, she remains a timeless icon of style, independence, and romantic whimsy. For others, She represents a complicated figure shaped by privilege, performance, and survival strategies in a male-dominated world. This multiplicity of readings enriches audience engagement, allowing viewers to project their own experiences and values onto the character. Social media and online communities have also transformed how audiences interact with Breakfast at Tiffany's. Platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok allow fans to share favorite scenes, fashion inspiration, and personal reflections, often celebrating the film's aesthetic and emotional resonance. At the same time, these platforms have facilitated critical discussions about the film's shortcomings, encouraging viewers to engage more thoughtfully with its historical context and cultural implications. This dynamic interplay between celebration and critique keeps the film relevant in contemporary discourse. Audiences today often approach the film as a nostalgic artifact, a window into the style and social attitudes of early 1960s America. This nostalgia can be both affectionate and critical, as viewers appreciate the film's charm while also recognizing its dated elements. This balanced approach reflects a mature engagement that values historical understanding alongside emotional connection. The film has also inspired a wide range of creative responses from audiences, including fan art, fashion recreations, and reinterpretations in other media. Fans have recreated Holly Golightly's iconic looks at costume parties and cosplay events, keeping her image alive in popular culture. Others have written essays and blog posts exploring the film's themes, character psychology, and cultural significance. This ongoing creative engagement demonstrates the film's enduring impact on personal identity and artistic expression. Audiences across different cultures have also embraced Breakfast at Tiffany's in unique ways. International viewers often admire its depiction of New York City as a glamorous, cosmopolitan locale, a portrayal that helped define global perceptions of American urban life. Holly Golightly's blend of vulnerability and charisma transcends cultural boundaries, allowing her to resonate with diverse audiences who see in her a reflection of universal human desires for love, acceptance, and self-realization. The film's romantic idealism continues to strike a chord with audiences seeking stories about connection and hope. In a world often marked by cynicism and complexity, Breakfast at Tiffany's offers a form of escapism that is both lighthearted and emotionally satisfying. Its themes of transformation, identity, and belonging invite viewers to reflect on their own experiences with love and self-discovery. Some audience members, particularly younger generations, encounter the film as a historical document, an example of Hollywood's golden age, with its glamour and technical mastery, but also its social limitations. This historical perspective encourages viewers to critically engage with the film, appreciating its artistry while acknowledging its flaws. Film clubs, retrospectives, and educational screenings often provide forums for such discussions, fostering community engagement around the film. The film's music, especially Moon River, evokes strong emotional responses from audiences. The song's wistful melody and lyrics capture the bittersweet tone of the story, enhancing the viewer's emotional journey. Many audience members report feeling a sense of longing or nostalgia when hearing the song, associating it closely with the character of Holly Golightly and the film's mood. Audiences have also reflected on the film's portrayal of friendship, loneliness, and urban isolation. Paul Varjak's role as an observer and confidant offers viewers a perspective on Holly's world that highlights themes of connection and emotional vulnerability. These themes resonate with viewers who have experienced similar feelings of alienation or the search for meaningful relationships in busy, impersonal environments. The character development and arcs in Breakfast at Tiffany's are central to the film's emotional depth and lasting impact. The narrative revolves primarily around Holly Golightly and Paul Varjak, whose complex personalities and evolving relationship drive the story forward. Through subtle interactions and gradual revelations, the film explores themes of identity, vulnerability, and connection, portraying characters who undergo significant personal transformations. Holly Golightly, portrayed by Audrey Hepburn, is introduced as a charismatic, free-spirited young woman living in New York City. At first glance, she appears whimsical, confident, and somewhat enigmatic. Her lifestyle is glamorous but unconventional. She socializes with wealthy men, hosts lavish parties, and seems untethered from traditional social norms. However, beneath this polished exterior lies a deeply vulnerable individual struggling with her past and her own sense of self-worth. Holly's character arc is a journey from guarded independence toward emotional openness. Initially, she presents herself as elusive and evasive, deflecting questions about her background and avoiding intimate attachments. She calls herself a wild thing, living by her own rules and resisting the idea of being owned or confined by a relationship. This persona serves as both armor and performance, a way to maintain control in a world that has been unpredictable and often painful for her. As the film progresses, small moments reveal Holly's inner conflict. Her attachment to her cat, whom she names Friend, symbolizes her own feelings of loneliness and need for connection despite her insistence on freedom. Paul's gentle persistence and genuine interest begin to penetrate her defenses, allowing audiences to see her complexity beyond the glamorous facade. Her hesitations, insecurities, and moments of sadness humanize her and invite empathy. One of the most significant turning points in Holly's arc occurs when she confesses to Paul about her past, her real name, Clarice, and the instability of her childhood. This revelation grounds her character and explains much of her behavior, including her reluctance to settle down or form lasting bonds. It also establishes a foundation for her eventual emotional growth, showing that her free-spiritedness masks a deeper fear of abandonment and loss. By the film's climax, Holly faces a choice between continuing her transient lifestyle and embracing a more stable, meaningful relationship. Paul's sincere affection and willingness to accept her flaws challenge her to reconsider her priorities. The iconic rain-soaked final scene, where she runs to Paul and they finally acknowledge their love, symbolizes Holly's acceptance of vulnerability and connection. This moment marks the completion of her arc, from isolation to intimacy, from self-protection to openness. Paul Varjak, played by George Peppard, undergoes a parallel but distinct character journey. Introduced as a struggling writer who lives off a wealthy benefactor, Paul initially appears reserved, somewhat passive, and emotionally cautious. His relationship with Holly evolves from detached observation to deep affection, revealing his capacity for compassion and patience. Paul's character development centers on his growing courage to confront his feelings and challenge his own insecurities. Early in the film, Paul is an outsider looking in, an observer of Holly's vibrant but chaotic world. He admires her but also recognizes her self-destructive tendencies. As the story unfolds, Paul's interactions with Holly encourage him to examine his own emotional barriers and fears. His role as a listener and supporter enables Holly to reveal her true self, while also allowing Paul to grow in self-awareness and emotional maturity. Paul's decision to stay by Holly's side, even when she resists intimacy, demonstrates his commitment and willingness to embrace uncertainty. His eventual confession of love is a pivotal moment, representing his acceptance of vulnerability and readiness to take emotional risks. Paul's arc concludes with a sense of hope and mutual healing, as he and Holly find solace in their shared connection. Supporting characters also contribute to the film's exploration of identity and transformation. Joe Bell, the neighbor and taxi driver, serves as a grounded, pragmatic contrast to Holly's whimsicality. Joe's presence highlights themes of authenticity and the value of genuine relationships. His unrequited affection for Holly underscores the film's exploration of love in its many forms: romantic, platonic, and selfless. Doc Golightly, Holly's estranged brother, appears briefly but serves as a narrative device to reveal Holly's past and origins. His interactions with Holly shed light on her real name and background, helping audiences understand the reasons behind her guarded persona. Through Doc, the film addresses themes of family, abandonment, and the search for identity. The cat, though an animal character, functions symbolically in the narrative and in Holly's development. Named Friend, the cat represents Holly's own need for companionship and the tension between freedom and attachment. Holly's decision to rescue the cat from abandonment mirrors her own emotional journey, moving from isolation toward connection. The film's pacing allows these character arcs to unfold naturally, with moments of levity and tension balancing the emotional beats. The dialogue between Holly and Paul is often layered with subtext, revealing their fears, hopes, and gradual acceptance of each other. Their relationship evolves through shared experiences, quiet conversations, and moments of vulnerability, culminating in a heartfelt climax. Holly's transformation is not portrayed as linear or simplistic. The film acknowledges the complexity of change, showing that her progress is fragile and tentative. Her final embrace of love is both a victory and a tentative step into a new way of living. This nuanced portrayal makes her arc believable and relatable, reflecting the universal human struggle to balance independence and intimacy. Paul's arc complements Holly's by showing how love and empathy can foster growth in both individuals. His ability to see past Holly's facade and accept her fully encourages audiences to consider the power of acceptance and understanding in relationships. Together, their arcs suggest that personal transformation is often catalyzed by genuine connection. The film's conclusion leaves audiences with a sense of hopeful ambiguity. While Holly and Paul's embrace signals emotional resolution, the narrative allows space for the future to remain uncertain. This open-endedness invites viewers to imagine the possibilities beyond the screen, reinforcing the film's themes of hope, renewal, and the ongoing nature of personal growth. In summary, the character development and arcs in Breakfast at Tiffany's are richly drawn and emotionally resonant. Holly Golightly's journey from elusive socialite to vulnerable woman seeking love is at the heart of the film's enduring appeal. Paul Varjak's parallel growth highlights themes of courage, empathy, and emotional openness. Through their interactions and transformations, the film explores universal questions about identity, love, and the human desire for connection. These nuanced character portrayals contribute to the film's status as a timeless classic, inviting audiences to reflect on their own experiences of change and relationship. Costume and set design are essential elements that contribute profoundly to the atmosphere, storytelling, and character development in Breakfast at Tiffany's. These visual aspects not only establish the film's glamorous 1960s setting but also deepen the audience's understanding of the characters, their social status, personalities, and emotional journeys. The meticulous attention to detail in both costume and set design has become iconic, influencing fashion and interior design far beyond the film's release. Beginning with costumes, Holly Golightly's wardrobe is one of the most enduring and recognizable aspects of the film. Designed primarily by the legendary costume designer Edith Head, with contributions from others including Schneider, the costumes for Holly were crafted to reflect her sophistication, charm, and complexity. The most famous outfit is the little black dress worn in the opening and closing scenes, simple yet elegant, paired with long black gloves, a pearl necklace, oversized sunglasses, and a cigarette holder. This ensemble became a symbol of timeless elegance and chic urban style, influencing fashion trends and becoming a staple look for women worldwide. Holly's costumes throughout the film capture her dual nature, the glamorous socialite and the vulnerable woman. Her clothing varies from extravagant gowns worn to cocktail parties, emphasizing her desire to appear refined and desirable, to more casual yet stylish ensembles that show her playful and youthful side. The costumes balance sophistication with accessibility, suggesting a woman who is both aspirational and relatable. Each outfit Holly wears communicates something about her mood or intentions. For example, the pink satin evening gown she wears to the party scene represents a sense of fantasy and allure, while the more relaxed, cozy sweater and skirt combination during her quieter moments reflects her need for comfort and normalcy. The cat-eye glasses and headscarves she dons in certain scenes add a quirky, individualistic touch, reinforcing her nonconformist attitude. Paul Varjak's wardrobe contrasts with Holly's more flamboyant style, reflecting his reserved and introspective personality. His costumes are understated, primarily consisting of suits and casual menswear typical of a struggling writer. This contrast visually reinforces their different worlds and characters, Holly as the glamorous socialite and Paul as the earnest, grounded observer. Other characters' costumes similarly serve to situate them socially and narratively. Joe Bell, the neighbor and taxi driver, dresses in practical workwear, symbolizing his straightforward, dependable nature. Doc Golightly, Holly's brother, appears in more casual, working-class clothing, emphasizing his blue-collar background and the contrast with Holly's glittering lifestyle. The set design further enhances the film's narrative by visually grounding the story in New York City's iconic locations and the stylish interiors that define the characters' worlds. The apartment building where Holly and Paul live becomes a microcosm of urban life, filled with eclectic neighbors and a mixture of charm and grit. The design of Holly's apartment itself is particularly notable. It is a small, cozy space filled with quirky, colorful decor that reflects her whimsical personality and desire for comfort amidst the chaos of her life. The apartment's layout and furnishings highlight Holly's mix of innocence and complexity. The presence of her cat, modest furniture, and personal trinkets reveal a softer, more vulnerable side beneath her glamorous exterior. The set design contrasts with the luxurious venues Holly frequents, emphasizing the disparity between her public persona and private life. New York City itself functions as a character within the film, with its streets, restaurants, and, of course, Tiffany and Company, providing a glamorous and dynamic backdrop. Iconic locations such as Central Park, the streets of Manhattan, and the interiors of fashionable establishments are depicted with attention to detail, immersing viewers in the bustling urban environment. These settings underscore themes of freedom, reinvention, and the pursuit of dreams. The film's use of color in costume and set design also carries symbolic weight. Holly's predominantly black and white wardrobe with occasional bursts of color mirrors her complex personality, both restrained and expressive. The muted tones of Paul's clothing and the apartment's interior contrast with the brighter, more vibrant scenes set in the city's nightlife, visually delineating different moods and social settings. Edith Head's costume design work was not only aesthetic but also strategic. She used fabric, texture, and silhouette to shape the audience's perception of Holly. The sleek lines and smooth textures of Holly's dresses suggest control and sophistication, while softer fabrics in more intimate scenes invite empathy. Accessories like Holly's pearl necklace and tiara evoke fairy tale glamour but also hint at a constructed identity, raising questions about authenticity and performance. Makeup and hairstyling further complement the costume design. Holly's iconic updo, with its volume and elegance, frames her face and enhances her glamorous image. Her makeup balances natural beauty with stylized perfection, emphasizing her eyes and lips in a way that enhances expressiveness. These choices support Holly's role as both an object of fascination and a complex individual. Supporting characters' makeup and styling align with their roles and social positions. Paul's appearance is neat but understated, reflecting his role as a working artist rather than a socialite. Joe Bell's rougher, more practical look emphasizes his grounded character. These visual distinctions help the audience quickly grasp character dynamics and social contrasts. The set design also extends to the film's more public spaces, such as the chic restaurants and parties Holly attends. These sets are lavishly decorated, featuring mid-century modern furnishings, elegant lighting, and stylish details that reflect the aspirational lifestyle Holly desires. The contrast between these polished environments and the more modest, lived-in spaces of the apartment building deepens the narrative's exploration of appearances versus reality. Lighting within these sets is carefully designed to enhance mood and emphasize character. Soft, diffused lighting in Holly's apartment creates warmth and intimacy, while brighter, sharper lighting in public spaces highlights glamour and social performance. This interplay of light and shadow supports the film's thematic focus on identity and emotional transparency. The film's iconic opening scene outside Tiffany and Company is also a carefully crafted set piece. The jewelry store's elegant facade, with its gleaming windows and luxurious displays, represents a world of beauty, desire, and stability, qualities Holly yearns for but struggles to attain. The contrast between Holly's casual breakfast and the store's opulence sets the tone for the film's exploration of aspiration and reality. Overall, costume and set design in Breakfast at Tiffany's work in harmony to create a rich visual narrative. The designs communicate character traits, social contexts, and emotional undercurrents without relying solely on dialogue. These elements immerse the audience in Holly's world, making her story feel both glamorous and deeply human. The dialogue and scriptwriting of Breakfast at Tiffany's play a pivotal role in defining the film's tone, character dynamics, and emotional resonance. Adapted from Truman Capote's novella, the screenplay was developed with contributions from George Axelrod, who shaped it into a romantic comedy drama that balances wit, charm, and poignancy. The script's nuanced dialogue captures the complexity of the characters, especially Holly Golightly, whose unique voice blends humor, vulnerability, and sophistication. One of the screenplay's greatest strengths lies in its ability to use dialogue to reveal character while advancing the plot. Holly's speech is a defining feature of the film. Her lines are often witty, enigmatic, and poetic, reflecting her charm and intelligence, but also masking her deeper fears and loneliness. The writing creates a character who is simultaneously playful and mysterious, allowing the audience to be drawn into her world while sensing there is more beneath the surface. Holly's famous opening line, "When I get gloomy, I just think of all the nice things that can still happen," immediately establishes her optimistic outlook despite her complicated life. Such lines set the tone for her character and the film as a whole, a mix of hopefulness tinged with melancholy. This balance keeps the narrative from becoming overly sentimental, maintaining a sophisticated and nuanced emotional texture. The script makes excellent use of subtext, particularly in conversations between Holly and Paul. Their exchanges often contain double meanings, unspoken desires, and emotional undercurrents. Paul's reserved nature contrasts with Holly's flamboyance, and their dialogue reflects this dynamic through pauses, interruptions, and subtle shifts in tone. The screenplay avoids explicit declarations of love until the climax, instead using suggestion and implication to build tension and emotional depth. Memorable lines pepper the film, many of which have become part of popular culture. For example, Holly's line, "You call yourself a free spirit, a wild thing, and you're terrified somebody's gonna stick you in a cage," encapsulates key themes of freedom and vulnerability. This quote not only reveals Holly's self-awareness, but also invites viewers to consider the universal human conflict between independence and the desire for connection. The dialogue often incorporates humor, which serves multiple functions. It lightens serious moments, humanizes characters, and creates rapport between Holly and Paul. Witty banter and playful exchanges reveal their chemistry and gradually build intimacy. The humor also helps to soften the film's more dramatic elements, balancing its romantic and comedic tones. The script's pacing is deliberate, allowing conversations to unfold naturally. The dialogue does not rush exposition, but instead lets characters express themselves fully, creating a sense of realism and depth. Scenes are carefully structured to combine dialogue with visual storytelling, with pauses and silences as meaningful as spoken words. The use of language reflects the social milieu of the characters, with Holly's urbane and somewhat affected speech contrasting with Joe Bell's straightforward and colloquial manner. This linguistic diversity enriches the narrative, highlighting social contrasts and character distinctions without resorting to stereotypes. The script's dialogue respects the complexity of each character's voice. Besides character development, the screenplay carefully constructs key plot points through dialogue. The gradual revelation of Holly's past and true identity is managed through conversations that feel organic rather than forced. Paul's questions and Holly's guarded answers maintain suspense and deepen audience engagement. The screenplay also integrates moments of poignant reflection, where characters voice their hopes and fears in ways that resonate universally. For example, Holly's reflections on love and freedom touch on existential themes that give the film its emotional weight. These moments elevate the narrative from a simple romantic comedy to a nuanced character study. The script balances dialogue with silence and nonverbal communication. Many of the film's most powerful scenes involve meaningful looks, gestures, and pauses that convey unspoken emotions. This approach allows the actors' performances to shine and invites viewers to read between the lines, engaging more deeply with the story. One of the most iconic lines, "I'm like Cat here, a no-name slob," delivered by Holly about herself, uses metaphor to communicate vulnerability and a sense of rootlessness. Such poetic dialogue enriches the film's thematic texture and adds layers of meaning to the characters' experiences. The film's romantic dialogue avoids cliches, instead offering conversations that feel fresh and authentic. The mutual misunderstandings, hesitant confessions, and evolving trust between Holly and Paul are portrayed with sensitivity and complexity. The script recognizes the messiness of real relationships, depicting love as a process of discovery rather than instant gratification. The dialogue also subtly addresses social issues of the time, including class distinctions and gender roles, without becoming didactic. Holly's interactions with wealthy men, her self-presentation, and Paul's role as a writer supported by a benefactor all hint at underlying economic and social tensions that add realism and depth. The script's ending dialogue is particularly effective. The final confession of love in the rain is both climactic and restrained. Holly's simple yet heartfelt line, "I'm not much," followed by Paul's reassuring response, encapsulates the character's emotional growth and mutual acceptance. This moment distills the film's themes of vulnerability, connection, and hope. The marketing and promotion of Breakfast at Tiffany's were crucial in establishing the film as a major cinematic event of its time and helping it achieve enduring popularity. Released in 1961, the film's promotional strategies skillfully leveraged the star power of Audrey Hepburn, the allure of the source material, and the stylish, urbane image that the movie projected. The marketing campaign combined traditional advertising techniques with innovative strategies that reflected the cultural climate and cinematic trends of the early 1960s. At the center of the marketing efforts was Audrey Hepburn, who was already an established star thanks to her roles in Roman Holiday and Sabrina. The campaign highlighted her transformation into the iconic Holly Golightly, emphasizing her glamorous wardrobe, especially the famous little black dress designed by Givenchy. Promotional materials showcased Hepburn's elegance and charm, appealing to audiences attracted by fashion, sophistication, and her burgeoning celebrity. Movie posters were a key element of the campaign, featuring striking images of Hepburn in her signature black dress, pearl necklace, and oversized sunglasses, often posed with a cat. These visuals captured the essence of the film's chic and stylish tone. The poster design used minimalist colors, predominantly black and white with subtle hints of color, reinforcing the film's modern, sophisticated vibe. These images became iconic in their own right, influencing fashion advertising and becoming collectible art pieces over time. Trailers for Breakfast at Tiffany's were crafted to tease the film's blend of romance, comedy, and drama, highlighting memorable scenes and the chemistry between Hepburn and George Peppard. The trailers often opened with the image of Holly standing outside Tiffany and Company, setting the mood of urban glamour and mystery. The promotional trailers carefully balanced humor with emotional moments, inviting viewers into the complex world of Holly Golightly without revealing too much of the plot, thus preserving intrigue. Press tours and interviews were another vital component of the promotional strategy. Audrey Hepburn's public appearances and interviews helped humanize the star and connect with audiences. She often spoke about her role with warmth and sophistication, discussing the challenges and joys of portraying Holly. Interviews also emphasized the film's themes of love, freedom, and self-discovery, appealing to contemporary social interests. In addition to traditional media promotion, the film benefited from tie-ins with the fashion industry. Givenchy's involvement in designing Holly's costumes created opportunities for cross-promotion in fashion magazines and events. Fashion spreads inspired by the film's iconic looks appeared in publications like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, extending the movie's influence beyond the cinema and into everyday style. Merchandising related to Breakfast at Tiffany's was relatively limited by today's standards, but included promotional items such as postcards, lobby cards, and soundtrack albums. The soundtrack, featuring Henry Mancini's memorable score and the song Moon River, was marketed to capitalize on the film's emotional appeal and musical popularity. Moon River became a cultural phenomenon, further promoting the movie through radio play and record sales. One innovative promotional tactic was the use of tie-in events and screenings at high-profile venues, including New York City's Tiffany and Company flagship store. These events blurred the lines between the film's narrative and real life, creating a sense of glamour and exclusivity that attracted press attention and public interest. The association with Tiffany's luxury brand enhanced the film's image of sophistication and desirability. Television advertisements and magazine spots reached broad audiences, targeting both young adults and more mature viewers interested in romance and stylish entertainment. The film's marketing tapped into the zeitgeist of early 1960s America, a time when social norms were shifting and audiences were eager for stories that combined glamour with emotional complexity. Critical reviews were leveraged in promotional materials, with positive excerpts used in posters and advertisements to bolster the film's reputation. Quotes praising Audrey Hepburn's performance, the stylish production, and the engaging story helped attract discerning moviegoers and build anticipation. The film's marketing also positioned it as a fashionable urban romance, appealing to women interested in the glamorous lifestyle and men drawn to its sophisticated tone. This dual appeal broadened the film's audience and contributed to its commercial success. Despite the film's success, the marketing did not shy away from addressing some of the more complex or controversial aspects of a story, such as Holly's unconventional lifestyle and ambiguous morality. This honesty in promotion allowed the film to stand out from more formulaic romances, suggesting a modern sensibility that resonated with contemporary viewers. In later years, the marketing legacy of Breakfast at Tiffany's continued to grow. The film's imagery has been reused in anniversary editions, fashion retrospectives, and pop culture celebrations. New marketing campaigns for re-releases and special screenings emphasize its status as a timeless classic, with a focus on Audrey Hepburn's iconic performance and the film's style. The film's influence on advertising and branding can be seen in how luxury products, especially in fashion and jewelry, have drawn inspiration from its visual identity. The association with Tiffany and Company remains strong, and the movie is often referenced in marketing campaigns that evoke elegance, romance, and sophistication. In summary, the marketing and promotion of Breakfast at Tiffany's were thoughtfully crafted to highlight the film's star power, style, and emotional depth. Through iconic imagery, strategic media appearances, and innovative tie-ins with fashion and luxury brands, the campaign established the film as a cultural phenomenon. Its promotional success helped ensure that Breakfast at Tiffany's would remain a beloved classic, continuing to captivate audiences decades after its initial release. Breakfast at Tiffany's occupies a unique place in cinema history, and its comparative analysis reveals how it stands apart and connects with other films in terms of tone, style, storytelling, and thematic concerns. Comparing the film to earlier adaptations, similar movies, and other works by director Blake Edwards provides insight into its lasting impact and distinct qualities. The film is based on Truman Capote's 1958 novella of the same name, and while it is not the first adaptation, it remains by far the most famous and influential. The novella's tone is darker and more cynical, with Holly Golightly portrayed as a more morally ambiguous and less romanticized character. The film, in contrast, softens some of these edges, making Holly more sympathetic and accessible to a wider audience. This tonal shift is a key point in the comparison, as the film prioritizes a romanticized view of Holly's life and aspirations, fitting the era's cinematic conventions and the demands of Hollywood's studio system. Earlier or alternate adaptations of the story, including stage productions or radio plays, often struggled to balance Holly's complex personality with audience expectations for a likable protagonist. The 1961 film's screenplay, primarily by George Axelrod, strategically adapted the source material to emphasize charm and romance, while retaining enough of Holly's enigmatic qualities to keep the character compelling. This balance helped the film gain widespread appeal but also drew criticism from purists who felt it diluted Capote's original intentions. When compared to other romantic comedies or dramas of the late 1950s and early 1960s, Breakfast at Tiffany's stands out for its urbane sophistication and blending of genres. Unlike typical romantic comedies that follow predictable formulas, this film incorporates elements of drama, social commentary, and character study. This complexity aligns it with films such as Roman Holiday, also starring Audrey Hepburn, and Charade, which combine romance with mystery and emotional depth. Director Blake Edwards, known for his versatility, brought a distinctive style to Breakfast at Tiffany's that set it apart from his other works. Edwards's later films, such as the Pink Panther series and Days of Wine and Roses, show a range of tone from broad comedy to serious drama. Breakfast at Tiffany's bridges these sensibilities by mixing lightheartedness with more serious, sometimes melancholic themes. Compared to Edwards's screwball comedies, this film is more restrained and elegant, focusing on mood and character over slapstick humor. In terms of visual style, Breakfast at Tiffany's differs from other romantic films of its time through its iconic use of fashion and urban settings. While many contemporaries favored pastoral or suburban backdrops, this film celebrates New York City as a character in itself. This urbanity contributes to the film's modern feel and appeals to audiences fascinated by cosmopolitan life. The film's visual identity, largely shaped by Givenchy's costume designs and the city's glamorous locales, contrasts with simpler or more rural settings in other romantic films of the era. Comparing the film to other works starring Audrey Hepburn highlights her versatility and evolving screen persona. In Roman Holiday, Hepburn plays a sheltered princess discovering the world, whereas in Breakfast at Tiffany's, she portrays a self-fashioned socialite navigating adult complexities. These roles showcase different aspects of her star image, from innocence and charm to sophistication and subtle vulnerability. Breakfast at Tiffany's solidified her status as a fashion icon and symbol of urban elegance, influencing her career trajectory significantly. From a narrative standpoint, Breakfast at Tiffany's employs a structure that blends episodic scenes with a romantic arc, which was somewhat unconventional compared to more straightforward narratives of the time. This approach mirrors the novella's fragmented storytelling, but the film imposes a more cohesive romantic resolution. This comparison highlights the adaptation challenges of translating literary works into film, especially balancing character-driven moments with plot momentum. The film's treatment of social themes also contrasts with contemporaneous movies. While many romantic films of the early 1960s avoided direct discussion of topics like sexuality, gender roles, and class mobility, Breakfast at Tiffany's touches on these issues with subtlety and sophistication. Holly's ambiguous profession, her complicated relationships, and her quest for freedom introduce a level of social realism uncommon in genre films of the time. This sets the movie apart as more progressive, albeit still constrained by Hollywood standards. In comparison to later films that explore similar themes of identity, love, and social aspiration, Breakfast at Tiffany's serves as a precursor or a reference point. Movies such as Sex and the City and La La Land echo its blending of romance, urban life, and personal ambition. These later works draw on the stylistic and thematic groundwork laid by Breakfast at Tiffany's, demonstrating its enduring influence on storytelling about women in modern cities. The film's influence extends to its visual and stylistic impact on fashion and design, which can be compared to other cinema milestones like West Side Story or The Great Gatsby. Each film uses costume and set design to evoke a particular era and social milieu, but Breakfast at Tiffany's stands out for its iconic simplicity and timeless elegance. The black dress and pearl necklace have become synonymous with classic style, a testament to the film's lasting aesthetic influence. Looking at other adaptations of Truman Capote's works, such as in Cold Blood or The Grass Harp, reveals a different cinematic tone, often darker, more dramatic, and less romanticized. Breakfast at Tiffany's occupies a unique place in this spectrum, blending Capote's nuanced character study with Hollywood's romantic fantasy, resulting in a hybrid that appeals to broad audiences while maintaining literary roots. Finally, the film's legacy can be contrasted with more recent reinterpretations of classic stories, including remakes and reboots that seek to update or revise original narratives. While Breakfast at Tiffany's remains a definitive version of Holly Golightly's story, discussions around its portrayal of race, gender, and cultural norms reflect changing sensibilities. These debates highlight the film's historical context and the evolving nature of cultural interpretation. In summary, Breakfast at Tiffany's compares uniquely to other films through its sophisticated blend of romance, comedy, and drama, its urbane style, and its complex, charismatic protagonist. The film's adaptation choices, visual design, and narrative structure distinguish it from both earlier and later works, while its influence can be seen across multiple genres and decades. This comparative analysis underscores the film's status as a cultural touchstone and a landmark in Hollywood cinema.